afternoon to one and all present here. We welcome you to the ICON Best 2021, a virtual conference on built environment science and technology organized by School of Architecture and Interior Design, SRM Institute of Science and Technology. I, Professor Esther Shereen, Associate Professor, Admin Coordinator, School of Architecture and Interior Design, have the honor of hosting the conference room 3 out of 6, ICON Best 2021 on 20th February 2021, Day 1. I welcome one and all, and I'm very excited to be amongst all of you in this conference for the afternoon session. I'd like to introduce our third speaker for the afternoon session, architect Daniel Lim. Known affectionately as Daniel Lim, he was born in 1963 and set up his practice as an architect in RSP since 1995. Daniel has been leading and growing the Vietnam studio since 2007. Daniel is the Vice President of Singapore Business Group in Ho Chi Minh City, 2016. He holds a bachelor's degree of architecture from Kent State University in USA, and he is also actively involved in mentoring architecture students in Vietnam and the region part of young. He is actively involved in mentoring architecture students in Vietnam and also the Asia Young Designers Award as a judge in the regional final and a member of the advisory council. With close to 30 years of experience in USA, Singapore, Malaysia, Myanmar, Vietnam, Daniel has an impressive portfolio of large-scale projects, especially in the residential and mixed-use sectors. These include outstanding projects at Vista Mulberry Lane and Compass One in Vietnam, Fraser Place in Putri Harbour, and Susanna Iskandar in Johor Bahru, Johor, Malaysia, Shanghai, Regency, and Gems Garden in Yangon, the Shanghai Airport Terminal 2, upgrading, and the Summer Hill at Dracoit 8 in Singapore. He believes that design is contextual, and in order to uncover the most suitable design from the myriad of possibilities, architects must first seek to understand the true meaning of the project through the tenacious effort to investigate, explore, and organize. Let us now proceed to architect Daniel Lim's presentation.
Greeting to all members and faculty of SRM Institute of Science and Technology, fellow architects and architectural students from across the world. I trust everyone is keeping safe from the COVID. Now, I'm Daniel Lim, and I'm an architect with RSP, architects, planners, and engineers. And I have been practicing for the past more than 30 years, starting in US, where I graduated, in Singapore, Malaysia, Myanmar, and now in Vietnam. So I currently head the RSP practice in Vietnam, and we have offices in both Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi. All right, so the topic of the talk today is a city, neighborhood, and the built environment in connection with new technologies. And the future is a very interesting topic. All right, because where I come from in Singapore, so I'll give a context of Singapore so that all my talks later on relate back to Singapore in terms of size and experience and things like that. So in these slides, you can see basically the city of Singapore with the CBD, the Central Business District, as the center is divided into 5 different regions. Central region, the West region, Northeast, and the Northeast region. And each of these regions has its own regional center. And then there are other towns, which like Bishan, Bedok, Punggol. And again, each town has its own town center. And then that again is broken down smaller component, which is the neighborhood like Kallang Bahru, Toa Payoh East, Chai Chee, etc. Again, which is own neighborhood center. So just to give you a rough idea in terms of population size to differentiate between city and neighborhood, you can see here that in terms of population size, the neighborhood is, we're talking about around 20,000 to 35,000 population, and then it goes up to about 2.2 to 5 million population for a city. And then of course you have the mega city, constellation city that is, above 8 million in terms of population. Obviously, you can see that 20,000 to 35,000, then you will ask what happened between 35 to 150,000. So towns are made out of several neighborhoods. So that's why you can see there's that gap in terms of the range of the population. Yeah. All right. Moving along, just want to give a little bit of a differentiation between urban planning and architecture. I myself is an architect. So we do the buildings and development in a slightly smaller scale. But in terms of urban planning, we are talking about common goals as architecture, livability, sustainability, the machine of life, and stage of life. But in terms of scale-wise, we're talking about for millions of people for X numbers of years, and that could be hundreds of years even. And then, of course, the level of interaction is at the city level rather than building level. And then we'll also talk about between urban and rural, which is basically what's made up of context of the city. And then in terms of image-wise, we're talking about the urban image. And then we're talking about city components rather than building components, building maintenance and operation. And then we're talking about for urban planning is about long-term planning, implementation, and development control. Yeah. So from the starting point, then we're talking about instead of the end user for the building, we're talking more about the population of the city itself. So in terms of using music as an analogy, urban planning is kind of like a conductor, whereas architecture is the individual musician within the orchestra itself. Okay, quickly moving along in terms of the significance of Singapore planning. Well, Singapore, although a small city-state, an island city-state, has developed in the last 50 over years since its independence from 1965 to be a model of modern city development for many other nations and cities. So I think what I'm trying to say that it is actually turned out to be a planning laboratory, meaning it's a test bed for many of the urban planning theories. And then these theories and policies are constantly updated in order to be basically matching the current requirements of people's lifestyle, economy, and the global, and then put Singapore in a global standing. Of course, for a small city of 728 square kilometers, it's actually quite high density and very, however, it's still very high livability because Singapore is very well known to be a garden city. Yeah, that has always been the stand by the leaders from day one. And of course, I think it works behind very good planning and strong implementations. And credit to the authorities in Singapore for making that possible. And for the people of Singapore, it's a wonderful city to live in. And itself is small enough where it's actually scalable and in fact replicable. And you will see that the model in Singapore is actually kind of scalable and replicated in actually many of the as a model of cities in China, which we will show you later. Many of the urban planning that RSP did in China. So the important thing is that every urbanization, basically successful urbanization, needs good planning blueprint, in other words, intelligent planning, which means that there must be a very intensive, meticulous, and rational study and think through to make sure that the city fits in terms of the location, climate, culture, and economy of the nations. Yeah. However, in the reality, many leaders focus and look straight into the landmark building, and in that way, actually underplaying the fundamental process of translating concepts into actual plan for subsequent proper implementation. So in here, I've listed basically 10 steps regarding intelligent planning. So basically, it starts with the first step in setting a vision. The decision maker will have to extensively collect and sift through a lot of theories and ideas from experts, and also consider the aspiration and needs of both citizen and government in order to formulate an actionable vision for the urban planning. Yeah. So from there on, it goes on to the projection of the population of the city. City must be planned in such a way whereby decision makers and planners need to collect and analyze the basic information of the city in order to estimate the suitable population size, density, and land area to be used to be covered. Yeah, that will then move on to point number 3, which is to quantify urban components. And these urban components are consist of various factors such as sociology, economy, environment, ecology, and so on and so forth. Then together with that, structured with an urban prototypes that are taking and learning from other cities and other nations around the world to create urban prototype that is clearly fits the context of the city that you're planning, and then create in step number 5 an urban structure with quantity, meaning you got to overlay this urban prototype that you created with all the consideration of sociology, economy, and so on onto a structure, a plan that takes into consideration the topography, the natural conditions, yeah, the natural features, river, sea, mountainous region, valleys, and things like that. Yeah, and then from there to step number 6, basically to create a master plan and detailed plan, starting from a very macro scale to more detailed plan. Yeah. And then finally moving on to urban design, and thus giving the city an image. So this urban planning will kind of take the master plan and the detailed plans and creating a image of the city, what it's going to kind of look like in terms of physical manifestation. And then of course, step number 8, and after the urban planning, urban design, and the master planning is all done up, then it's got to be put into legislation and then enforced and implemented. So this step is very important, because no point creating a plan and then people do not follow it in terms of its development and its enforcement. All right, in its enforcement, obviously, then it gets down into the individual architecture and the design of the respective building, whether it's high-rise, low-rise, whether it's residential, commercial, or anything like that. Then we move on into the architectural domain. Yeah, and within this architectural domain, it will be also carried out in phases over a duration. And then lastly, in terms of the citizen and patronage by corporates, then we need to stage exhibitions and education and promotion program so that the city dwellers and the businesses that exist in the city understand where the city is coming from and where it's heading to, and will buy into the plan. Yeah, so that's a very important step. All right, next we'll look at the Singapore planning process. Basically, Singapore, under the Urban Redevelopment Authority (URA), will work up key concept and structure plan. And this key concept structure plan basically forms the backbone of the Singapore planning, and it's a 40 to 50 years plan. And then for each areas, each region, then you have the development guideline plan, and this is the going into the detailed planning and the planning units, and it stipulates the type of land usage, it stipulates the plot ratio, building heights, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and then you have a master plan, which is more detailed planning, which is conceived for the next 10 to 15 years. And this may emphasize a certain area of the city that the development may be focused on. And then lastly, in terms of implementation, there will be in terms of land transfer and the development contract from there. Yeah. Moving along, I'm going to run through three basically cities, futuristic city which actually exist now. They are Shenzhen, Singapore, and Masdar City in Abu Dhabi. Now, Shenzhen is one good example of very rapidly developed city at a rate unseen before in history. And I think this is basically attributed to the political view of the Chinese government. And to me, indirectly, it also reflects what is going on politically in the surrounding areas, particularly the situation in Hong Kong in the last few years. So basically, Shenzhen, together with its neighboring area of Zhuhai and Shekou, which is the port city, has really taken over much of the development and investment that around this Pearl River Delta area. So if you understand it, basically back in 1980, Shenzhen was just a small fishing village, formerly known as Bao'an. But today, it is a sprawling city of 12 million plus inhabitants and still growing. So this picture of Shenzhen back a long time ago and what it looks like now. And I was there in June 2019, and we were invited to tour some of the new projects that were going on, and also to visit the port and the newly completed cruise terminal. And it was amazing, yeah. So Shenzhen was officially designated as the city of design on December 7, 2008. So that was around 12, 13 years ago. And Shenzhen became the first city in China joining the UNESCO Creative City Network. So the Chinese government basically aims to turn Shenzhen in one of the leading cities in the world in terms of economic strength, quality of development by 2025, a national model of high quality development by 2035, and also a top cosmopolis worldwide by the middle of the century, yeah, so by 2050. All right, moving along quickly, Singapore is where I'm from, and Singapore got its independence in 1965, and in the last 50 over years, it has successfully gone through quite a major transformation. Again, starting like Shenzhen, a very a small fishing village and a small port. And it's gone through certain transformation. In here, I've listed in terms of greening, the greening of Singapore itself, transforming it into a garden city has really paid off, and it make it a very livable city, and it becomes a model of development for many other cities. And then the Marina Bay area, basically the Marina Bay area is a reclaimed area, and that is also the new CBD, Central Business District of Singapore, with a lot of commercial development in and around the Marina Bay area. And then the old airport is actually relocated, and then Changi since then became where the airport is. And I think Changi Airport probably is rated in the last 10, 20 years as one of the most busy and advanced airport in the world. And Jurong Island, away from the main population area and also away from the main city center area, has been earmarked to be an industrial area. So they are doing very good planning in terms of trying to separate the industrial area from area of highly high density area. And then, of course, the city center itself is a bustling hub in terms of commercial activities. Yeah. So previously, Singapore has embarked on a very ambitious land reclamation from the sea since it's independent, and that has proved to be increasingly difficult and unsustainable in an era of global climate change and seawater rising. So where do we go? So since it is difficult and you keep throwing sand into the sea is not a viable action, the country has then moved on in terms of the looking at the possible development below ground in recent years to free up spaces and making it a global leader in underground urbanism movement. So you can see here images of an underground science city. And then with this kind of a one-of-a-kind project, Singapore plans to build an extensive cavern system, providing office and laboratory space for R&D and IT, biotech, and life sciences. The limited surface space basically urged the megacity of the world more and more to look for alternative and sustainable use of underground space. So Singapore, although an island, is fortunate to have a very good subsoil condition and ideal for underground boring and tunneling, and to create livable, workable spaces in the subterranean. So the facilities has to take into consideration, of course, safety, sustainability, and economy. Obviously, it's not cheap to create and board underground to add more usable spaces. Yeah. So one of the project is basically the underground city under Kent Ridge on a 20-hectare piece of land. All right, moving along, the third example of futuristic city is this is by no means a size of a city as what we defined it earlier. Basically, it's about 6 square kilometers with a population of about 40,000. So in actual fact, actually it is in the category of township. But this is amazing in the sense that it's adjacent to the Abu Dhabi, an old city in the UAE, and it basically springs out from desert land and starting in 2008. So Mazda City embarked in an ambitious plan to develop one of the world's most sustainable cities back in 2008. And basically, it is a model for sustainability and a hub for research and development, spearheading the innovation to realize a greener and more sustainable urban living condition. The city is home to growing clean tech businesses and duty-free zone and residential neighborhood with restaurants, shops, and public green spaces. And also, it's gathering momentum in terms of its expansion. And then I think one of the major corporation, Siemens, has its headquarters there in Pasir City. All right, we move on quickly in terms of some selected RSP city planning projects. Basically, this is a portfolio of the project by scale. In terms of the size of a neighborhood from 20 to 40,000 population, we have done about 28 projects, with majority of them in China. And then for new towns that are bigger, 150 to 300,000 population, again, China leading the way with 14 projects there. Regional project, which ranges from 600,000 population to 1.5 million population. 4 in Indonesia, 4 in China and 1 in Indonesia, total of 5. And then city that has population of more than 2 million. Again, China leading the way with 18 projects, and then followed by Saudi Arabia with 4. And then the biggest city, we have six projects in China. All right, we move along quickly, and I'm going to share 2 particular master planning and urban planning projects in China. Actually, they are both located in Yizhong County, and Yizhong County is basically located in the northwest region of China. So it is not along the coast. It's definitely not one of those first-tier city. In fact, Yizhong County basically is the gateway to Lanzhou, which is the capital of Gansu province. So it has an area of about 3,300 square kilometers. And comparing that again with Singapore, that is about 4.5 times the size of Singapore. But in terms of population, it's only about 560,000. Again, comparing that with Singapore, that's why Singapore is high density and high livability. Singapore has about 5.8 million population. So the whole county is then divided into 11 towns and 9 townships. And we're going to talk about Xie Guanyin later on. And Xie Guanyin is one of those new towns that is in this Yizhong eco and innovative city. All right, this is a design competition that RSP won back in late 2019. It's actually the called by the Lanzhou Development and Reform Commission, and it's for the Yizhong innovative city of about 129 square kilometer. And again, in comparison, that is about 18% the size of Singapore. So that kind of give you an idea of what are we talking in terms of size, because to many architects, some of these square kilometer sizes, which is 100,000 hectares each square kilometer is quite a inconceivable size and area. All right, so for both of these 2 schemes, basically we're going to talk about 2 main features and 6 innovative strategy. All right, so moving along, basically for the Yizhong Eco-Innovative City, the first feature that we're going to talk about is basically its industry and academia collaboration. Basically, what does that mean? It actually, put it in a simple sense, is basically putting the industry in close conjunction with the education and academy uh, uh, location, so that it gives company an early access to talent, and for undergraduates who are studying in one of the Institute of Higher Learning to have increased opportunity for learning and early exposure to real actual practice. Yeah, so that itself is a strategy. It's an economic strategy, and it's also for in terms of providing um, high quality human resources to the city needs. All right. The second thing is, as you know, China is basically a country with deep history of ancient dynasty and things like that. And this Yuzhong basically has its history dating back to 200s BC, before Christ. And it started basically in the Qing dynasty. In fact, I think at one time it was actually called Jingmen or something like that. Yeah, and it changes its name to Yizhong. And I think we got to recognize that unlike Mazda City, which springs up from the desert, I think in many places in China, there's a lot of history that is attached to it. So I think in Yizhong Economic City, there has to be a recognized between cultural heritage and culture of innovation. What does that mean? Basically, is that the past history, heritage, economy, industry, demographic, structure, and connectivity, it's got to be carefully analyzed. I mean, you just can't start with a clean slate. You got to recognize what is there already in terms of culture, the people, the physical condition, and all that. And then using very clear vision and a unique identity. A unique identity was developed whereby urban and rural area coexist, harmony, and the past, present, and future exist together. And the past is then cherished, and the future is heralded. Yeah. All right. Moving along to the innovative strategy. Of course, RSP from Singapore, we use integrated the Singapore planning concept in terms of decentralizing and creating a self-sustaining new town. In terms of introducing the concept of urban cells to create compact and efficient city with good land use and distribution based on the TOD principle, meaning the transit-oriented distribution principle. And then cluster-based development. Basically, cluster-based development and the agglomeration of economic activities that benefit each other in terms of its present are strengthened and basically gives the city economy-based diversity. All right. Then, of course, one of the third strategy is regenerating and greening the city. So the city itself is designed with a central park and a riverfront corridor, green corridor, and the application of a sponge city strategy. And I think this is very important for new and sustainable design. Many new cities are planned with a lot of hard surfaces like road, pavement, things like that. And water runoff from this hard surface then goes into the drain, and sometimes it's mixed with other discharge, and the water is then contaminated to some degree and then flows into river, reservoir, and things like that. So the best way actually is to have as much as possible soft surfaces, natural surfaces, whereby rainwater would seep through, and then through the natural process of filtration of the geotextile layers of the earth itself, before the water actually reaches the aquifer and replenishes the subterranean water table. Yeah, so I think we need to look at this sponge city concept in a very detailed way to improve the sustainable living of a future city. And moving along, the fourth strategy is basically talking about conservation of urban heritage to provide a sense of identity, and then linking that with the visual and physical link to the city past in the ever-changing urban landscape as the city develops. All right. Of course, then the city, as mentioned, is then designed along the transit-oriented distribution. So in terms of excellent accessibility, road networks, and different type of public transport system, high-speed rail system, MRT, mass rapid transport system, LRT, bus corridor, and even looking ahead, and actually not really looking at, it's currently already exists, basically app-controlled driverless car system like taxis and buses and things like that to enhance the sustainable competitiveness of itself. And then lastly, the point of urban regeneration, which is the renewal of the old city center estate, creating better access and conditions for private investment. Because it's very important that the city is developed in such a way and built in such a way whereby it attracts its investment from the private sector in the form of new housing to give the city a new image that blends in together with its heritage. All right, so that is basically Yuzhong eco-economic city, which is the size of a city, 129 square kilometer. So now we scale down to more of a town. Yeah. So we talk about Xie Guanyin Innovative District, which is actually within the Yuzhong Eco-Innovative City. As you can see, this was completed a year later in middle of 2020, and its planning area is 5.1 square kilometers, and basically it's commissioned by the Lanzhou Rail Transit Construction Administrative Office. So again, we'll talk about two main project feature, and then 6 innovative strategy. Yeah. So basically, this Xie Guanyin Innovation District combines, integrates university and Institute of Higher Learning together with industrial park, medical center, and other community facility, with the aim of close collaboration between all this industry and academia. And then this is then primed to house key growth sector for the digital economy. So it will be home to an ecosystem of open innovation and a conducive environment for business and community to thrive. Yeah. Then there is integrated space utilization, clear structural system, and a multi-layer hierarchy. Considering the climate, of course, located in China, it has the 4 seasons, it has the summer season where it is hot and humid, and then it's got the in-between seasons of autumn and spring, and then the cold season of winter. So considering its location and its climate, basically the different buildings within the city is interconnected seamlessly above ground and below ground, creating people-centric spaces and a series of multi-layered public spaces and amenities, and maximize the exposure to the river, the Wanquan River, to create vibrant waterfront development. Yeah. All right. Basically, architects are usually guilty of this. Third point, the first point of the innovative strategy about human-centered design. I think it's very important that architects, planners, needs to basically understand that we are always designing in the image of the human. So sometimes I personally not a big fan of these mega projects, things like that. I feel that we need to go back and look at city more in tune with the human scale, relating to the human scale, and then design appropriately scaled building to define meaningful open spaces in the form of street, square, plaza, courtyard, and other elevated pedestrian pathway and public green spaces. And then the second strategy is basically this golden triangle of business, education, and research, putting into practice for startup and existing firm, education and college institute together as the heart of the town development. Yeah. So that is basically one of the main ideas for this Siakoning Innovation District. Then we move on to connectivity landscape for collaboration. I think all these various campuses of the college, of the university, the industrial park, the medical center, and the city center itself needs to be connected seamlessly together, and in its various cluster, and at its ages, it needs to be connected seamlessly. And then, of course, in a self-sustainable way, whereby the planning itself takes into future consideration of sustainability in the overall populations. Excuse me. In the overall population for the future that the city can accommodate adequately within the size and its planning strategy. Then, of course, we look at smart urban solutions addressing design objective like reducing greenhouse gases emission. And I think this is something that every new city plan got to be very careful about. We can no longer live, design, and create a physical environment in an irresponsible way. So we're talking about things like traffic safety, green roof, and providing pocket parks that are linked together. Yeah, and then of course, final initiative basically is a low carbon emission, shaping the built environment in a way whereby it is sensitive to water in terms of contamination and pollution, and implementing renewable urban forest strategy, and of course energy savings strategy like renewable energy generations and district cooling, district heating, things like that. Yeah. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about basically covers the research and development, and it's one of the things that our Vietnam office here did some study of. Basically, we see that pollution, air pollution, is at a very critical level in many cities around the world. And in one of those cases in Hanoi, which is the capital of Vietnam, basically has a very high pollution index, partly because of the Red River. And even in Ho Chi Minh City, there's a lot of fuel burning vehicles, cars, motorbikes, buses, and things like that that gives rise to very heavily polluted air. And you see people going around, whether pandemic or not, wearing a mask. So we were at one time exploring this bio-nanotechnology concept whereby we uses a fabric kind of a filtration system and an LG technology that is housed in the stained glass panel done in various shapes and sizes, and then integrating that into the building facade. So then it is somehow integrated into the architecture as manifestation of its building facade, and then it works in a way, it looks good, and then it also looks in a way to kind of help to purify some of the internal and the external air, and this can be actually then done indoor and also outdoor applications. Yeah. All right. So I come along to my closing remark, and basically I'm 58 years old architect, so my runway is rather short from now on. But this talk basically addresses and focus on the graduate architects, architectural student, and young practicing architect, which has a long future ahead of them. And I think what I want to end here is to say that the future is unknown, is yet to be written, and we learn from the past. We look at history and we learn from the past, the mistakes, and how to improve, go on from there. And then the signs of today's are basically written on the wall. And the future of urban planners and architects will have to grapple with a lot of new issues that are already being faced today. Issues like global warming and the rise of the sea level, pollution, air, water, ground pollution, and even space. Yeah, with all the satellites and things that we are throwing up into space, one day it's going to be filled up with all these things, and then it's actually polluting, and it's going to come back down one day. And then, of course, in recent times, the global pandemic and gives rise to health issues. So planners and urban planners and architects needs to look at population controls and social distancing and things like that in terms of the design. And in many cities, overpopulation. This is a big problem. It gives rise to congestion and things like that. And then we have wars, which can be in the form of military and or trade wars, which we can see now going on between some countries. And then, of course, with technological advancement, then it also gives rise to disruption and a new way of lifestyle. And we got to live with this technological advancement, and we got to anticipate them and integrate them into the future planning of a city and the built environment. All right, the last, of course, but not least, food shortages and contaminations. So you'll find more and more with the overpopulation and the less and less shortage of water and farmland and things like that. You will see that in the future there could be potential food shortages and even food contaminations. All right. We cannot help but embrace technology to help our life easier and better. So some of these things that I'm going to mention is already a fact. So it's a science fact. But some of them are still in the fictional world, but will be a fact in the near future. I think people like Elon Musk and a few others are already looking into artificial intelligence and has warned the world of what it could be and the danger of artificial intelligence if it is not well controlled and managed. And then, of course, you see in many advanced factories, in Tesla factories and NIO factories making electrical cars, the use of robots is going to be displace a lot of jobs for the human. And then high-speed transits and cover long distances in fastest possible time. And the hyperloops, for example, that are within concealed tunnel spaces. And then space internet. So it's going to increase our connectivity even better, even faster. And then the possibility of living on water and even underwater. And this is at the time still fiction. Space colonization. I don't know, maybe in the future where the Earth population and grown in such rapid fashion, and there's going to be shortage of physical spaces, livable conditions, food, and things like that, whereby human may have to colonize space, colonize other planet, or maybe starting with the moon. Yeah, and then of course living underground, which is already happening, and Singapore is one of good example of boring into the subterranean and creating usable spaces and things like that. And last but not least, I've listed here mobile apps, driverless car, and even flying cars or passenger drones, which will be coming up, whereby, again, you will be using the airspace to travel between point A and point B. All right. So, as I said, for the architectural fraternity and students that are going to be graduating, so the future of urban planners and architects will basically have a very complex and challenging task, kind of like a textile weaver, to be able to juggle, stitch, and weave many of these layers, horizontal layers, vertical layers, or volumetric layers, components, culture of different location, time-lapse, historical, current, and future elements into cohesive living and working environment. So good luck to the profession, and I will be very interested to see how we go from here. Yeah, that brings me to the end of my talk and my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect Daniel Lim, for your insightful presentation. I'm certain that the audience have found it to be a very informative session. Now we shall take a short break for our sponsor video, post which we shall proceed to our next speaker, Professor Keat Ong.
Epoxy adhesives are widely used in the industry because of their high strength, chemical resistance, and the ability to adhere to different surfaces. But almost all of them have low impact strength and low UV resistance, which makes them weak after long-term use, under stress and limitations. To combat all these issues, we are introducing Bondtite Pro. Bondtite Pro is a high-performance 2-component multi-use new generation epoxy adhesive system with room temperature curing. It has very high impact strength, excellent shear strength, better UV resistance, better coverage, and so much more. And it is to be used for bonding various similar and dissimilar materials such as metals, ceramics, wood, leather, rubber, marble, glass, and a lot of other materials. Bondtite Pro is very easy to use. The directions to use are really simple. Step 1. Clean the surface and make sure it is free of dust, unsound material, loose plaster, oil, paint, grease, algae, and corrosion deposits. Step 2. Take equal quantity of part A and part B. Step 3. Mix it for 1 minute with the help of Bondtite applicator to attain uniform color. Step 4. Apply on the surface. Step 5. Clamp or support the surface for 4 hours. It will attain full strength in 24 hours. And that's all there is to it. You can use it for speakers, marble pasting, automobile repair, and hardwood handicraft. Bondtite Pro.